ourselves of some of the important factors about coaching and mentoring at work. So without further ado, I'll get started. What I'd like to cover are these things. So first of all, we'll have a quick review of what coaching and mentoring are, what each of those is, and how they differ from each other. Then I'd like to look at the skills that are required by someone who'd like to be a professional coach at work. I suppose I should mention that I qualified as a life and work coach 12 years ago, back in 2012, 2002, when I lived in Hong Kong. Anyhow, back to the agenda. I'd like to look at when coaching is appropriate at work, when it's a set of skills that you can use. But I'd also like to look at the other side of the coin, not just when you want to coach somebody else, but being coached yourself. One of the things I learnt was that if you're going to be a successful coach, you must be a good coachee as well. And I'm going to use the word coachee. I hope that's okay with everybody. It's less of a mouthful than saying the person who's being coached every time. So I'd like to look at that. And then we can look at perhaps some action points that you could take away following this webinar, if you're interested. So first things first, the definition of coaching. And I'll read out what's on the slides for those who might not be able to see them clearly. So the definition of coaching. Coaching is a developmental process by which an individual gets support while learning to achieve a specific personal or professional result or goal. The definition of mentoring I take from Andrew Pollard's book, Reflective Teaching, which I can show you if you're so interested in looking at this book. This is a great book. I have it on my shelf and I refer to it when I'm thinking about teaching a lot. So he says, mentoring is a means of providing support, challenge and extension of the learning of one person through the guidance of another who is more skilled, knowledgeable and experienced, particularly in relation to the context in which the learning is taking place. So this begs the question, well, what's the difference then between coaching and mentoring? What is the distinction between these? And this, for me, sums it up very nicely. Coaches use questioning and listening techniques to bring out the full potential of the individual, whereas mentors act as advisors, suggesting new paths for the individual to take. To mentor effectively, you must possess an in-depth appreciation and knowledge of the subject on which you are advising. Often, the relational positions of mentor and individual being mentored are equivalent to that of teacher and pupil. And in a coaching event, on the other hand, the positional relationship is much more on a par, as the coach's role is to create an environment for the individual to learn for themselves. Now, many people wonder, is coaching and mentoring necessarily discrete from each other? For me, they are. And this definition and distinction sums it up very nicely. We tend to mentor when we are working with novices or beginners in their working lives, people who need the guidance of an expert. But as soon as an individual starts to gain more experience at work, as soon as they start to have their own opinions and their own perspectives on what they do, then the skills of a coach are about being able to draw out those skills and help individuals to find solutions to problems or to find the way forward to achieve a goal for themselves. The underpinning rationale for that is that it's far more rewarding if an individual draws their own action plan, create their own goals, find their own solutions for themselves. So that for me is very important. Of course, there are different styles of coaching and mentoring. You know, my son is a sports coach, and he would say that coaching per se is much more directional. It's much more instructional than I would say. So in the educational field, I think that when we're thinking about coaching, it's much more non-directional. It's much more about asking questions to help individuals move forward for themselves. I hope that that is a clear explanation about the distinction of these two terms. I get that from changeboard.com. So can anyone be a coach? Are there specific coaching skills that one has to have or has to acquire and develop? Well, yes, I would say almost anyone can be a coach, but they do have to possess specific skills. Now, they're not life-changing skills. They're not skills that are beyond any of us to develop. These three, asking questions, analysing skills and being able to summarise, are very much the skills required in a good coaching conversation. We talk about the interaction between a coach and a coachee as a coaching conversation, and these are inherent conversational skills. Asking questions, analysing the information that you're given in an efficient way, and being able to summarise quite regularly what is being said. Then there are coaching skills of a higher order, which are about being able to help individuals set goals. Now, you know, this is much more difficult than appears on paper. Setting an achievable goal and achievable objectives is quite challenging. We'll come back to this a little bit later in the talk. We have to be able to prioritise. How do you know what to do first? What's the most important first step? What are the priorities that you need to focus on in your work or in achieving the results that you're trying to achieve? Giving and receiving feedback are also extremely important for both individuals, for the coach and the coachee. It's very important that both individuals are happy receiving and giving feedback. And as a coach, you have to be able to relate to all people. Now, this was something that I learned while I was training to be a coach. It was, I think, the thing that convinced me that coaching was absolutely a crucial set of skills and a way of approaching management, and a way of approaching helping people at work to develop and move forward, because it is revelationary, and it is extremely rewarding to be able to work with an individual and help them to develop. And that means all kinds of people that you probably would never have had an opportunity to think about in unique ways. So because the focus is on listening, you get to know people much better than you perhaps thought you might have done in the first place. And of course, planning and organising. It's not just the person who wants to achieve goals that needs to plan and organise. A coach has to be very well organised in helping someone to move forward. Okay. I do want to focus. I feel that this subject's been done to death, but it is incredibly important to talk about listening skills. It's something which I have to suggest to myself. Okay, now I'm in listening mode, because I'm quite an active talker. I quite like talking, but when coaching, it is crucially important that the emphasis is put on listening. So you need to intend to understand, and this requires deferring judgment and paying close attention. You're looking for deeper meaning and understanding around the actual words that people say. It's very important to bear in mind as a coach that the words that people utter do not necessarily convey exactly the meaning that they want to convey. You have to be patient and exploratory to really understand what a person means when they're speaking to you. And we're very, I find, I speak for myself, we can be very fast at drawing conclusions. And this is something that we cannot do. We must prevent ourselves from doing that. We need to be able to get inside another person's frame of reference. It's very important that it's not my world that we're discussing. It isn't my problems. It isn't my interpretation of a problem or a goal. It is the coachee's world that is most important. We talk about listening with your eyes and your mind, not just with your ears. And this, of course, means observing, watching the individual, and building that analysis and that understanding of that person's world beyond just what they're saying. So we're listening for meanings and feelings. Feelings are very important. And body language. Yes, I think it's I'm conscious right now that I'm sitting in front of a screen and I'm talking to an audience I can't see, and the only thing I have to kind of pay attention to are my words, and plus my own facial expressions and the way that I'm coming across. And perhaps that's one of the advantages of a webinar, because most of the time we can't see ourselves. We don't know when we have a puzzled look on our face, and we don't understand that this may be interpreted differently from our intention. So yeah, becoming more aware of our bodily position, from the expression on our faces, the sounds that we make is very important. I'm looking at 15 coaching principles now, which for me guide the practice of coaching. And I've have to thank this chap, Chuck Reynolds, for these principles. I've played with them a little bit and reinterpreted them, but for me, they do sum up the kind of essential parts of the coaching universe. So first of all, if you want to be a coach, first of all, you need to understand what coaching is. I suppose there's a lot of people who might think, well, coaching, it just means sitting down, talking to people and listening to them. What's difficult about that? However, if you work with different coaches, you will start to discover that different coaches have different skills and different perspectives, and some people are good at certain aspects and some people are good at others. And a good coach really understands what coaching is and what it's about, and you start with that inside knowledge before you progress. And again, when you're training to be a coach, the first thing you're doing is checking your perspective on people. What stereotypical principles are you fighting against? What ways are you interpreting people because of the way they dress, or the way they speak, or from the food they eat, or whatever signals you're picking up from people? You need to stop and go, whoa, hold on here, stop drawing conclusions from what you can see. So it's very important that you defer judgment, that you're able to hold and check your perspectives on people and keep them under control. It's recommended, particularly when you get started, that you learn and practice and follow an effective coaching model. And this we'll come back to in a moment. It's certainly a good way to keep yourself within a framework and to keep yourself on track for what you're trying to achieve. This is fascinating, of course. We have so many types of people, and as I say, one of the absolute joys of being a coach is understanding that so many different types of people are around us. They view the world in different ways, and they have different strengths, and they bring different levels of personal experience to life, and being able to really appreciate that is a crucial value for a coach to hold. And again, people might think, well, just going to have a coaching conversation, I'll be ready in 10 minutes. It's a high priority set of skills. It's a powerful interaction when it's done well and it's planned properly. And it's really important that time is prioritised at work to really allow the coaching conversations with staff, with team members, to work appropriately, to work as they should. Point number 6 here, stop putting out fires. This is an excellent piece of advice. Coaching is very much about making quite big, significant changes. It's about changing direction. It's about developing new behaviours. It's about achieving longer-term goals. Now, what happens sometimes is that you find yourself in a work situation where someone comes to you and says, oh no, I have a problem. What can I do to solve today's problem? You know, I've got to find a solution right now. And you respond to that, and then next week the same similar situation occurs again. And all the time you are fighting a fire as opposed to changing a behaviour, changing a way that someone works or the way that someone approaches a work situation. So we have to avoid the putting out fire approach and be very focused on achieving change. Seeking regular feedback is very, very important. In education we know this very well. Of course, we do it all the time. But it is about seeking feedback in both directions and seeking feedback from a variety of people. Coaching is about learning, and therefore feedback is absolutely crucial to that process. And point 8 has fallen off the screen. I don't know why, so I'll tell you what it says. It says, listen, 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 listen. I won't go into that in any more detail. I think we know what that means. Point number 9, as I say, is about growing and developing. All right. Coaching, when I started out, one of the questions I asked my coach was, well, what's the difference between coaching and counselling, for example? How do I know when somebody is suitable for a coaching relationship as opposed to a counselling one? And he said, oh, you'll know this very quickly, because coaching is very much about looking ahead. It isn't about looking back. And counselling is very much about looking back. It's a medical term very often, and it's about looking at deeper rooted issues that an individual may have to deal with. And coaching is very much about forward planning. It's very much about improvement. It's very much about changing for the better. And therefore, you identify very quickly that these are the traits of the person who wants to be coached and move forward. And this is another nice point. Again, nowadays in education, this is becoming a term through facilitative learning. The emphasis is on progress. But an individual who's not succeeding at work, or someone who's struggling to achieve a goal in their life, very often they beat themselves up. They get very fixated with why they're failing as opposed to why they're succeeding. And as a coach, it's an important thing to bear in mind, that everything is about being able to reward progress and not to become too fixated or to put too much attention on what hasn't worked. I mean, unless it's about solving the problem nice and quickly. But once we've done that, it's about moving forward and recognizing progress. We talked about questions, and this is a really key point that comes under the principle section, which is use the right questions. Now, this is far more complex than we can handle in the few minutes that we have together for this webinar. You learn that there are certain questions that don't move things forward, and there are certain questions that do. Again, I have a good book. This book here, called Coaching Questions, is always beside me. This Tony Solstice, and that is a lovely book for pages and pages of questions for different aspects of the coaching relationship. So that's another book that I recommend to you. It'll be on the book list at the end of the talk. This is also this is really back to where we were talking earlier on about the distinction between coaching and mentoring, because this is where we appreciate in coaching that the coachee knows the answers to their problems. Now, sometimes people think, well, they wouldn't come to us if they know. They've come for advice. They've come for your help. They've come for your suggestions. Now, we say in coaching that you should be very resistant to giving suggestions too quickly or too soon, unless you've given the coachee ample opportunity to explore their own ideas and to explore their own experience and what works and what doesn't. The value of this is that, as we know, when you discover a learning point for yourself, it is far more impactful than when somebody else tells you this piece of information. So principle number 12 here is remember the coachee knows the answers already, and what you're doing is exploring that in order to draw that out. 13 is about breaking down big goals into little steps, and this is a mantra for my life. I'm a fixated person with lists, and I like ticking things off. So I'm a big believer in the little steps approach. So when somebody has a fairly big goal and it seems like a daunting task, it's very important to say, right, what is the first thing you need to do? Yeah, what's the first thing? I noticed there's a question. Thank you, Natalie. You're talking about the book I just showed you. I will come back to the book. It's on the book list, and it was Tony Stoltzfus. Forgive me for not being able to say it properly. Okay, lovely. I'll get back on track. So breaking big goals down into little steps. And this is another one that I like. Have a little think about that. There's no right and wrong. I take this one into all my training sessions, and I get people to think about this because, of course, the first thing we think is, well, of course there is. There's always a right and there's always a wrong. Or, you know, perhaps there's a grey area, but the underlying rationale for this principle is to give people the opportunity to explore the fact that different things can be right and different things can be wrong in different situations. And what we presume is right might not be the only right. There may be many different right ways to do something. And so it's again about deferring judgment, but it also creates a real feeling of empathy and a real feeling of respect, because it isn't about right and wrong, it's about progress, development and growing. So you're exploring that and you're not being judgmental about the suggestions that people come up with. Okay, and point number 15, maintain forward momentum. Okay, I've referred to this in passing already. Don't be fixated on the past. Mistakes are made, move forward. Something happened, move forward. We all have our life lessons. We're all aware of the things that go well or don't go well. It's really important to stay positive and keep forward momentum going. People they embark on big goals, they embark on new ways of learning to work or developing new skills, and then they lose the momentum. It gets tiring. Okay, a coach's responsibility is to keep a person moving forward and be able to sort of say, look, see the goal, see the destination, see how you are progressing towards that, and keep them on track. Okay. Sorry, just checking the chat line here for a moment. Okay. So some simple ground rules when you're in the coaching relationship. So there you are. You've decided to be a coach. Someone is with you. You're the coachee. And these are some of the ground rules that you need to establish right from the beginning. So first of all, it's really important to sort of say, okay, we're meeting today. We have 1 hour to chat. What is the purpose of this coaching session? What are the objectives that we're going to be working towards? What is it you wish to achieve? It's very important to try and start with what you want to attain at the end of the coaching meeting, right from the start. so that you have a target, you have a destination, and you're able to say, we've achieved it, we're there. It's very important that you're both honest and fair with each other. Now, honest means honest, and fair means constructive and factual, and not biased or judgmental, and that you are working in the best interests of succeeding, of that individual succeeding in what they want to achieve. It's really important, if you want to be the coach, that you understand the coachee's world. All right, and you have to take the time and put the effort in to really appreciate that. And you need to understand about the coachee's relationships with other people. How are they working with other members in the team? If it's a teacher that you're coaching, you want to think, well, how's that teacher getting on with other teachers? You know, what kinds of relationships, what kinds of strengths does that coachee bring to other relationships? Perhaps it's the teacher's role in the classroom. It's an opportunity to really work with the coachee if you understand their world better. And the two final points here on the ground rules are absolutely 100% crucial. Insist on action and insist on accountability. The coachee does the actioning. The coachee is responsible for change. What you find very often when people are looking at the obstacles or the barriers or constraints of moving forward is that somebody else is to blame. Oh, somebody else won't let me, or I don't have enough time, or it's too difficult, or I don't have the right tools, or there isn't any money, whatever it might be. The thing is that when we want change to happen, we can make it happen. We find ways to achieve what we want to achieve. So it's important that the coach and the coachee insist on the coachee's accountability. You agree to take action and you do it. Okay, very important. So when is coaching appropriate? Oh dear, I apologize. There is a spelling mistake on that sheet. I can't change that from here. Well, when I was, training to be a coach, one of the questions that the coach asked us, he said, do you think managers can also be coaches? And there was a big discussion about this. Following the completion of that program, I now don't understand how you can be a manager and not a coach. For me, they are crucial aspects of the same role, the same set of responsibilities that you have. So regardless of whether you're a manager with a team, a small team or a large team, whether you're a teacher who works with other teachers for your professional development, or whether you're working with your students and you're providing feedback to students or counselling sessions for students, coaching skills are going to be incredibly useful for you. So when is it appropriate? Well, it's appropriate in practically all situations at work. If you're managing someone's work performance, a coaching approach is appropriate. If you're looking at people's professional development, coaching obviously is very appropriate. Giving observational feedback. I think this is quite an important one to highlight, because we find not increasingly, but traditionally, observation is more of a mentoring role, where there's kind of an expert, or the boss or the manager or the academic manager comes in and does the observational feedback. And it's traditionally seen as a mentoring role. It's seen as a role where the expert is watching the learner or the person who needs to develop. Now, I have moved forward quite considerably from this kind of perspective, and for me, a coaching relationship meets observational feedback needs really, really well. Again, go back to the idea that you're on a par with each other, that you're both experienced teachers, that you both have a viewpoint on how a lesson goes. You have different ways in which you might want to move it forward. If a coachee comes away from observational feedback with their own ideas, this is much more impactful for the individual concerned. So observational feedback, consider using coaching skills as opposed to mentoring skills with teachers who have been teaching for some time. Use coaching skills to resolve a whole pile of work-related problems. Maybe it's team working problems, maybe it's skills that need to be identified. Again, very, very appropriate. And I can't forget to mention managing change. We're all doing it. All managers in schools are constantly trying to manage change. And the one way to get buy-in from team members, from teachers, from staff is really to work with a coaching agenda. I recommend it. Okay, and of course, enhancing team effectiveness. So when is coaching not suitable for work? Well, when a mentor role is more important, or of course, if you're, beyond developmental stages, then perhaps you're looking at more directional methods of management at work. But I would always recommend the developmental approach first and foremost, always about the individual being part, being in control, being responsible, having ownership of that developmental path. Okay. Let's just spin it sideways a little bit now. We've been talking a lot about the skills and ground rules and principles of coaching, but of course there are really important things to consider when you are the person being coached. And I'd like to think about being coached now and the value in peer coaching. Not every school, not every organisation is able to say, well, yes, we've got some experienced qualified coaches here. And then this is a very, very nice opportunity to get peers, to get colleagues working together. Doesn't matter whether you're talking about teachers, whether you're looking at staff in your office. Peer coaching is a lovely way to get people developing and moving forward and solving problems together. So what does it require? Well, first of all, you need to find someone who you trust and someone who trusts you. And then check that each of you want to learn. Hey, are we going to have a relationship here where we're both looking at learning? We might not be learning the same things, but we both want to learn and we're going to work with each other so that we can improve. And then set a schedule, all right, so that you stick with it. Coaching isn't something which happens once in a while. It's a series of conversations it's a series of conversations that moves you forward and helps you to learn. So you need a schedule of conversations. Emma, I'm just looking at your question. So coaching helps the individuals find the solutions themselves, and mentoring, the individual is given the solutions. Yeah, from the distinction that we provided earlier on, this is one way, and it's certainly the way that I differentiate between coaching and mentoring. Mentoring is usually done by an expert in the profession. So a teacher expert, a teacher trainer, very often is mentoring, particularly in pre-service teacher training. It's very much a mentoring relationship in this situation. And once you're talking about working with teachers who've been around for a number of years, feel very confident, perhaps think, oh, I don't need to develop very much now. I'm already very expert, I'm already very experienced. The coaching approach allows a much more fluid, free way to explore new ways of looking at things, new ways to develop that perhaps the coachee hasn't really thought about before. So it is, yes, where you're exploring the coachee finding the solutions for themselves. Okay, back to peer coaching. So each of the peers decides what their learning objective is and share it with each other. All right, and then you need, when you meet, say you meet for an hour, you divide your time together. You say, right, okay, half an hour we'll focus on your objective, and for half an hour we'll focus on mine, and be strict about that and stick to it. Or you might say, okay, today's meeting is about me or about you, and then the next meeting we swap. And I like this, okay, because this is, teachers like doing peer observations, for example. But I think perhaps there's room to develop peer observation feedback skills. And we looked at how important being able to give and receive feedback is in the coaching relationship. So the key thing about peer coaching in such a situation is where you're both striving for objectivity. And it isn't about saying, oh, yes, I understand. Yes, oh, the students are difficult, aren't they? It's really about being able to say, okay, what are the issues with that student? What do you think the problem is? Why do you think they're not concentrating, for example? Why are they distracted? Let's look at some options. Let's look at some suggestions. So being very objective in the way you move the conversation forward. So it means that you avoid griping and grumbling. You don't think, oh God, I don't have enough time, and oh, I can't get the students to do what I want them to do. All right, this is not a productive way to spend the time. So you have to be quite firm with each other. Okay, we've had our 2 minutes of griping. Now stop that. Now let's move into a nice objective plan of how we're going to move this forward. All right, positive action. What can we do about it? What can we do? We can do. There's always something you can try. There's always something different you can try, always. Firmly believe it. Keep exploring how you can find that time and those solutions together. And then agree to hold each other accountable. We've mentioned this already, how important it is. All right. Okay, what are you going to do? Mary, for example, what are you going to do? All right. When are you going to do it by? All right. All right. Next time we meet, come on, you're going to come back and you're going to tell me you've done it. Okay. You've got to do it. You're going to do it? Yes. I promise I'll do it. I'm accountable for it. All right. So when you're being coached, what is it? All right. Bear in mind, everybody, you might think, look, I want to coach, but the first lesson that I learned when training to be a coach is you can't coach if you can't be coached. Right? If you're not open to being coached, then you're not in a position to coach. You can't lead by example. You can't get into the perspective of the other individual because you have no empathetic understanding of what it is to be coached. So you need to develop both sides. You need to find a coach as well as wanting to be a coach. This is really important. And there's a lot of people who go into coaching and they say, oh, I want to be a coach. But what happens when you start being a coach is that you have to be coached. And people, they back out. They go, well, I don't like this. I don't like this. I don't like this kind of relationship. I don't like exploring these kind of issues myself. And then they drop away. So it's very important that we understand this, that we have to be able to be coached as well as wanting to coach others. So rule number 1, you need to want to know that you want to improve. You want to learn, you want to develop. Even if you're a bit afraid of it, it doesn't matter. Opening up your mind to improvement is the first step. And you have to be open to constructive feedback. You have to be able to say, okay, that's fair. All right, I hear your point of view, and you have to be able to move forward and take it on board. You have to develop good reflective skills, and I'm not going to talk too much about that now because it's coming up in a moment. And you have to trust your coach. You have to believe, you have to know for sure that your coach is working in your best interests. If not, change your coach. And you have to take ownership of your own goals. Okay, this is back to accountability. All right, so you have to understand that the only person who's going to change, the only person who's going to learn is you. All right, so you have to be responsible for it. And you have to be committed to taking smart action. All right, smart, specific, measurable, achievable and agreed, realistic and time-bound action. Okay, so this is where I was saying that setting goals can be quite difficult. They can feel quite dreamlike. They can feel quite abstract. Setting smart objectives is what we're really achieving. Smart objectives give you those steps towards achieving your goals. Forward thinking. All right. Don't focus too much on the past. Today is a new day. Tomorrow is a new opportunity to try something new and move forward. Start afresh, move forward. Okay, seek out your coach. All right, don't wait for a coach to come and find you. Seek your coach when you need to sit down and talk through a situation, when you need to have a coaching conversation. Seek out your coach. Be proactive. And then do what you say you'll do. I like this final point here. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to yourself. All right. Life is tiring. Life provides lots and lots of issues and problems and challenges and duties that you have to fulfill. And you can't do everything brilliantly all the time. So don't beat yourself up. Don't beat yourself up. Be kind. Okay, it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to have got things wrong. So long as you have the desire to move forward, to be positive, to try again, to try something new, this will take you forward. All right, so don't beat yourself up. Mentioned at the beginning, one of the principles was it's good to have a coaching model. I'll show a couple to you. We're not going to go into these. If we were doing a training session, we would practice them until you are doing them as second nature, but you can still take them into your peer coaching situations and try them out. There are many coaching models out there, and really, you can find one that works for you. This is the most famous one, GROW, and the G stands for setting goals, setting objectives. The R stands for understanding your current reality. What is the situation right now? What is it? What are the challenges you're facing? What are the what are the difficulties? What are the strengths? What things are working really well? What relationships? Really understanding the current reality. The O stands for the beginning of the forward moving process. So what are the options? What are the options? List as many as you can. Don't put one down and go, yeah, try that. List all the options. List them no matter how wild and crazy they might sound, because sometimes the new and exciting comes from the craziest ideas. And then also at the same time, under these O's, you need to think about the obstacles. What are the barriers? What walls do you have to get over? What do you have to go around? Who do you have to talk to? What do you need to acquire in order to achieve it? Get those out. Make sure that you can remove the obstacles. One thing is for sure. If there is an obstacle in the way, you will not achieve your goals. You have to remove the obstacles, or you have to avoid them. And the W means the way forward. So this is the action planning part, all right? What are you going to do? When are you going to do it by? Okay. Okay. This is another model which I was introduced to on a short program. I haven't ever found it since, which uses the acronym COACH, where you're collaborating, you take ownership, you acknowledge what you have to do, and you are accountable for it. It's about communication and it's about help, but I don't want to spend too much time on that one. But even if you stick with the GROW model, then this will take you forward well enough, or explore in the literature some of the other models which you might prefer to use. Okay. I referred to reflective practice, and I just want to come back to it again. Reflective practice is absolutely intrinsic to the coaching process, and it does require a little bit of thinking backwards, because you're looking at a particular event or a particular relationship or a particular situation, and you describe it, but the emphasis is on moving forward as fast as possible, going through the steps of the reflective practice model, and then moving towards drawing good analytical conclusions and action planning. And I just wanted to bring reflective practice in here because it's so useful in the education world, and coaching and reflection go hand in hand. A quick little piece of advice. I find that when people say to me that a coaching relationship hasn't worked, often this is because they find that the coach is being a bit patronising. Now, this is a difficult area because, a coach generally wants to help. That's what they're doing. And so, they want to kind of help you move forward. And sometimes this leads to misunderstandings. But it's worth bearing in mind these points, okay? Don't presume you know how the other person feels, all right? Try not to, say things like, oh, I know how you feel, all right? This can be completely, can have a very negative impact on the relationship, all right? Try to avoid expressions like this. Understand the person's character and style of working, all right? So that you're not judging it straight up. Be very careful with the words and expressions that can be interpreted negatively. I don't want to go into this too much, but as a coach, you have to be very conscious of the words that come out of your mouth and how somebody is responding to them. I've called this avoid insulting one's intelligence, even if they don't know something you know. Sometimes when we tell people something which is obvious to them, it makes them feel quite insulted. So this is, again, the value of coaching, because you don't tell people anything. You just explore them to be able to draw the conclusions themselves. And this gives great power to the coachee. All right, and one of the recommendations in the literature will be to say, avoid using suggestion questions. Don't you think you should try again? This type of question is deemed inappropriate. And then withhold unsolicited advice. This is the biggest problem when we kind of take control of the other person's situation. When we say, yeah, well, what worked for me, I'd like to share it with you. Withhold suggestions until the other person has explored as much as they can. So that's kind of it. That's pretty much all I wanted to say on the subject in that whirlwind summary. But how might you move forward? How, from this talk, what else might you want to try? Well, you might want to run a coaching workshop for all your team. It's very, very useful to not just be your own person, just think, well, I've learned about coaching, I'm now going to go into work and talk about it and do it. It's better when everybody understands it, when everybody's working to the same agenda. You might choose to get a coaching qualification, and there's plenty of them out there now. And for me, it was life-changing. I mean, I absolutely can't advocate this enough. So, if you wish to do that, good luck with it. At work, identify your coaching enthusiasts. There'll be plenty of people around you, I'm sure, who are quite keen. And then, be able to build them into the team using their coaching enthusiasm. Find coaching experts, people who can do it well, who can model coaching behavior, can do coaching situations that other people can observe. All right, these are good ways to develop the skills amongst a wider audience. Introduce a coaching culture at work. You can do this in part by, referring to coaching through different types of systems and processes in your handbooks. The coaching approach to observation, or the coaching approach to one-to-one meetings, or the coaching approach to performance management. Starts to inculcate a very nice culture when you do this. Observe coaching practice. All right, get observation happening around coaching. We don't do enough observation at work. We talk about observing teachers. Well, what about observing everybody? What about observing the manager? What about observing team performance, and then being able to coach through that work event? Very, very powerful learning experience. And seek feedback. If you are the manager, seek feedback from staff on coaching effectiveness. All right, ask them. What can you change? What can you improve? What are your strengths as a coach? What areas could you develop further? And then, of course, the obvious thing, If coaching as an ethos, as a way of working appeals, then go away with an informed plan now and start to achieve your goals. All right. So that's pretty much it. There's the books. So when you come back to the webinar, you'll be able to have a look at the books that I have on my shelf. That's just a selection of them, but they're ones that I look at quite a lot. And if you would like to contact me further, if there's anything that you'd like to ask me, if I can be of any service to you and your team, then you can contact me through any of these means. And I'd love to keep the dialogue going with you.
Thanks, Lorraine.
I'm very passionate about coaching.
Yeah,
it's very strange talking to a screen.
No, it's fine.
But,
if anyone had any questions,
if you want to make
they
the
want to ask
conversation
in
more real, then please just get in touch.
Box.
Thank you very much. Do you have any questions? Or have I struggled to keep up with questions along the way? So Andy, help me out. Lucy, they're on the screen, yeah? Drop me an email, I'd suggest, is the first way to, or you can find me on LinkedIn with my details, but there's my simple email address. Please, drop me a line. No, not my first webinar. I've done 5 or 6 of them now. Starting to get used to talking to a computer screen myself. It's a bit strange, but it's okay. Thank you, Irina. I'm glad that there's a big silent listening audience. That makes me feel better for sure. Does anyone have any questions? Is there anything that you wanted me to pick up on? Was anything not clear? So Rachel asks me, where did I take my initial coaching qualification? Well, I did it with Coach U, as in U, the letter U, for the Coach University based in the States. But they were doing face-to-face and teleconferencing training, which is how I did it for 9 months actually, while I was living in Hong Kong. But it was great. It was great. I've never looked back. I mean, it's just part and parcel of everything I do now. So Lucy, many people seem to get confused between counselling and coaching. Why do you think this is? Well, I think the reason is because we don't draw distinctions between the terms. It's they're used interchangeably, aren't they? I mean, we talk about counselling students, don't we, very often in education. If you go and work in the university sector, you'll talk about student counsellors, career counsellors. The term counselling is by definition very, it's used in a number of different ways. The distinction for us when we were learning to coach was that counselling was more of a medical term, that people perhaps were suffering with depression or had issues that they needed more medical professional help for, and that was the distinction that we were kind of encouraged to bear in mind when looking at coachable candidates. Many people seem to, yes, we've done that one, okay. Fiona, slightly worried about the honesty issue. Presumably honesty is given when honesty is asked for, but it would not be advisable to be honest if negative about something, not solicited. I absolutely agree, Fiona. Thanks for sort of pointing that out. I think honesty means basically you just don't lie. I mean, there are gradations of honesty. There's a time factor, of course, isn't there? When is an important point to draw attention to something? I mean, if you go in and you do an observation, a teaching observation, and you see, and it's not a good one. Let's imagine there's lots of things that you think perhaps need some work. That's my opinion as the observer, but it wouldn't be what I would bring into the observational feedback session. I would ask the individual, what they would like to, pay attention to. So then we can develop an honest dialogue around that. So yeah, honesty is a good one to pay attention to. It means about telling the truth sensitively and in a timely way. I hope that clarifies that, Fiona, or perhaps you still have another question on that. I can see people are typing. That's what I'm waiting to see, the typed questions come up. Fiona, yeah, thanks. That's what I thought. Yeah, good. I'm pleased that yeah, it's honesty is an interesting subject. I think it's about being constructive and timely, and I talked about being analytical as a key skill of a coach. Timeliness is part of that analysis. One needs to be able to frame the language of a coaching meeting in positive and constructive terms. This is very important. So, are we done? Does anyone have anything else? Thank you, Andy, for asking the question. I suppose I should fill the silence while I'm watching you type. I should think of something else to say. I've already been talking too much, though, haven't I? It's kind of interesting, you're asked to do a talk on coaching, and talking for 45 minutes is precisely what a coach mustn't do. So to me, honesty in this context means authenticity. Absolutely. Thank you, Michaela. Absolutely right. Yes, authentic, genuine, honest, constructive. Annetta. Hello, Annetta. What suggestions would you give to someone attending a first coaching session, apart from an open mind, I suppose? Do you mean as a coachee? It's a very good question. Yeah, as the receiver, thank you. There are two ways in which a coachee approaches their first coaching session. One, they're doing it voluntarily. So, for example, when I became an independent consultant, this was quite a big life-changing decision for me to make. So the first thing I did was to go and find myself a coach. And I had a very, very, very fruitful relationship with my coach over a 3-month period while I moved forward. Now, in that situation, I was very clear about what I wanted to do. I just didn't know how to get started, and I really wanted to kind of build the pathway in the right way, and I needed to be able to talk that out with a coach who asked the right questions for me. So in that situation, it's about the first step for the coachee is understand a little bit about what you're trying to change, what you're trying to improve, what difference do you want to make in your life or in your work situation. All right, that's kind of the first thing that you take into a meeting, and the coach will then help you explore that. If it's a work arranged coaching session, and someone says to you, right, I think you should speak to a coach, then yes, an open mind is absolutely crucial. Because coaching relationships are fantastic. They're fantastic. They give you such a great opportunity to just explore issues, to talk through things from work that perhaps you've not had the chance before. You haven't had someone you could trust, someone who would listen and steer and not judge you. So an open mind in the situation can lead to all kinds of positive benefits. Will you be at the LAMSIG event in November? Says Rachel. Yes, I can't wait. I'm really looking forward to it already. I will be there. Are you going to be there, Rachel? And if you are, I look forward to seeing you there. Lucy, sorry, Lorraine, I missed that. What shouldn't a coach do? talk too much. Oh yeah, I'm just saying that I'm talking all the time, which is precisely what you don't do as a coach. Oh, great, Rachel. Lovely. I look forward to seeing you in London at the LAMSIG Londoza event. I'm really, really looking forward to it. I live and work here in Berlin, so any opportunity to travel and work overseas is fantastic.
Okay, sorry, you can hear me now, I think.
Thank you, Annetta, for that feedback there. Well, Andy, I think we've reached the hour. Perhaps.
Yes, you can hear me now.
I can't hear you, Andy, though.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone for coming, and thanks very much to Lorraine for all your hard work talking to a blank screen. Those of you who are not sure about that last little conversation about the LAMSIG event in November, you can find on the LAMSIG website the details, but it's in London from the 28th and 29th of November, and it's about packaging and special focus on technology. So hopefully, if you're in or around London, you can attend. I think it'll be an excellent event. I think the sound is going bad now. All right, I'm going to turn mine off, but goodbye, everyone.
There's a problem with your microphone, Andy. No.